There is a version of you that stayed too long and called it strength. Maybe it was a job that kept shrinking your confidence a little more each month. Maybe it was a relationship where you got smaller every year to keep the peace. Maybe it's still happening right now, and you've been telling yourself the same sentence for a long time. I'm just being patient. By the end of this, you'll have a way to tell the difference between the patience that is actually building you and the patience that is quietly erasing you, because they feel almost identical from the inside. And mistaking one for the other might be the most expensive mistake a calm person can make. Start here. Patience was never the goal of Stoic philosophy. It was a tool built for a specific job. Marcus Aurelius used it to keep governing well while surrounded by betrayal, sickness, and war he couldn't control. Seneca used it while managing the volatile politics of Nero's court, knowing that a poorly timed reaction could cost him his life. In both cases, patience bought them something: time to think, room to choose their next move deliberately instead of out of panic. It was never meant to be the destination. It was meant to protect their judgment long enough to let them act well. That distinction matters, because somewhere along the way, a lot of people learned a different version of patience. Not patience as a tool for better judgment, but patience as an identity. Being the calm one. Being the one who doesn't make a scene. Being the one who can take anything. And once patience becomes who you are, rather than something you're using, you stop asking what it's for. You just keep doing it, because stopping would mean admitting you're not that person anymore. This is where healthy patience quietly turns into something else. Let's call it what it actually is when that happens. Not patience, but endurance. And endurance on its own isn't a virtue. It's just capacity. A wall can endure weather. A rock can endure pressure. Neither of them is being virtuous. They're just not breaking yet. Here's a distinction that will save you a lot of wasted years. Healthy patience is active. You are still working towards something, still gathering information, still choosing your moment. Passive endurance is not active at all. It's just absorbing impact and calling it discipline. The tell is simple. Ask yourself what your patience is currently producing. If you can't answer that question in one clear sentence, you're probably not being patient. You're being worn down slowly and mistaking the wearing down for growth. Now here's where it gets sharper, because there's a third category, and it's the one almost nobody names correctly. Self-betrayal. Self-betrayal is what happens when your endurance stops costing you comfort and starts costing you your own standards. You know the moment. It's not just that something is hard. It's that you've started explaining away things you used to consider unacceptable. You used to have a line about how people could speak to you. Now you don't, because enforcing it seemed like too much conflict. You used to have a standard for what a job should give you back in exchange for your time and energy. Now you tell yourself to be grateful just to have one. That shift from "I won't accept this" to "I guess this is just how it is not patience maturing. It's you negotiating yourself down. Epictetus drew a hard line here that most people misquote. He said some things are within our control, and some things are not, and wisdom is knowing the difference. Most people stop there and use it to justify accepting anything. But Epictetus wasn't teaching passivity. He was teaching precision. Your reaction is not within someone else's control. And here's the part worth being exact about. Leaving a situation is not always fully within your control either. Money, safety, children, health, timing, all of that can genuinely limit how quickly you're able to walk away from something. Stoicism was never about pretending those constraints don't exist. What is within your control always is the boundary you recognize as real and the next honest step you take toward it. You may not be able to leave today, but you can stop lying to yourself about whether this is acceptable, and you can start moving, even slowly, instead of standing still and calling it peace. So how do you actually tell these three apart in real time, when you're standing inside the situation and everything feels tangled together? Here's a way to check yourself that's specific enough to actually use. Ask first, am I choosing this, or have I stopped noticing I still have a choice? Healthy patience is a decision you keep making. If you can't remember the last time you consciously chose to stay, that's a warning sign. Ask second, has my definition of acceptable shrunk to fit what's happening, or am I still measuring this against the standard I had before? If your standard moved to match your circumstances, instead of your circumstances being measured against your standard, that's self-betrayal wearing patience as a disguise. Ask third, if a friend described my exact situation to me, using my exact reasoning, would I call it wisdom, or would I be worried about them? Most people already know the honest answer to that one. They just don't ask themselves the question, because the question is uncomfortable. None of this means Stoicism tells you to walk away from everything difficult. That's the opposite mistake, and it's just as costly. Seneca remained in Nero's court long after it turned dangerous, and worked within its constraints for as long as that seemed possible. As the situation grew more untenable, he eventually asked Nero directly for permission to withdraw from public life. That request tells you something important. He wasn't simply absorbing the danger indefinitely. He reached a point where he judged the constraints had changed enough to act, and he acted openly by asking to leave. That's the real Stoic position, and it's much more demanding than either extreme. Not blind endurance, and not impulsive escape. Continuous, honest evaluation of whether your patience is still doing its job. So here's the practical version, the part you can actually use today. Pick one situation right now where you've been telling yourself you're just being patient. Run it through the three questions. Am I still choosing this? Has my standard shrunk or stayed the same? Would I call this wisdom in someone else, or would I be concerned? Answer honestly, even if the answer is uncomfortable. especially if it is. If it holds up, good. Keep going and keep choosing it on purpose. If it doesn't, you now know something you didn't fully let yourself know this morning. And knowing it is the entire first step toward acting on it. If this helped you see your own situation more clearly, subscribe, because there's more of this coming. You didn't stay too long because you were weak. You stayed too long because you stopped checking whether staying was still a choice. Start checking again. That's not the opposite of patience. That's what patience was always supposed to be.